Hello, everybody. How's it going? Jordan's here. We're just getting set up. We're getting our notes ready.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jordan is.
I always come prepared.
Jordan comes prepared. We'll start just in a couple minutes. Could be a lot to talk about on this one. Oh my goodness.
This will be the longest podcast ever.
Nah, I don't think. I mean, it'll be long, but I don't think the longest ever. Oh, somebody already said they're here to see Jordan's outfit. Well, I tell you what, Jordan dressed like me today.
No, I did not. Look at
You have a
this.
polo shirt,
No.
gray pants,
No.
polo shirt,
This is
gray
insulting.
pants.
This is insulting.
It's not insulting. He dressed like me.
Buttons undone.
He's already preparing for when
Front
I win
typed
the
in,
good race poll.
White belt, stylish white belt, matching the stylish white shoes. Belt always matches the shoes, Jeff. And these are tight gray pants, not some thrown together dad slacks.
Target.
I just want to point out, I got called today by multiple people, well dressed and handsome.
You're not even in the.
I got called today, well dressed and handsome by multiple people.
Somebody says, "Where are we at the Speedway?" We're in the media center. There's a few radio rooms here in the media center. Nobody has taken this one, so we got it. When are you going to be ready?
I'm ready. Let's go. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Sorry.
All right. Is this good? Is this good enough? Far enough away?
My hair look okay?
Your hair? Does my hair look okay?
No, you don't want me to answer that question.
All right. All right. I guess we should start this podcast. All right. Are you guys ready? Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Are you really going to be just in the corner like that? Shouldn't we
It's not my fault you tilt your computer the wrong way.
Oh, how are you supposed to tilt it?
It was more this way instead of my way. No, you're good now. Go back. There you go. No.
Oh, like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Somebody said Jordan dresses like a true Minnesotan. Is that good? Oh, he didn't like that one. Oh, Zach in the comments, he didn't like that one.
Is there a boss tag?
Oh man, don't read these comments. All right. He said you look like Penn from Penn and Teller's long lost son. Don't read the comments, Jordan. Never read the comments. Never read the comments.
Dressed like a school teacher? You show me a school teacher that wears a white belt.
All right.
Anyway,
nobody knows what a white belt means. Let's just talk about the race. Are you guys ready? Okay. Let's just go. All right. Deep breaths, Jordan. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. All right, here we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, and I'm along with my coworker Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and we are here at Daytona International Speedway. It was a little bit after midnight on Sunday, so it's still a Sunday Teardown. Jordan, just not the. We just didn't see the race on Sunday.
That's true.
But we did see a race that was as scheduled at Daytona without a single drop of rain all weekend.
I can't believe, I do not remember the last time I was at Daytona and it didn't rain once. It didn't rain once.
Not a drop.
Not a drop. Friday, Saturday, nothing.
No lightning.
No delays. No, it was crazy. I mean, we had a red flag, but I'm talking weather delays. None of that. It was, I couldn't tell. It was perfect. It was unbelievable.
Really bizarre.
And especially at the time, too, when Florida's had a lot of rain. This week is, before I got here, it was raining and it's been raining. And
of all places this whole summer where it's been raining, and you would have been like, okay, here's the list of all the tracks where it could rain or whatever.
Daytona's number one on that list. Daytona should be number 1 through 10 on that list.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we also saw a crazy race, but that wasn't very surprising because we kind of knew that at some point people were going to go for it. People were going to make a mistake. They were going to run 2x2 for a while. They actually ran 3x3 for a really long time.
Great race.
I was like, yeah, that
was fun. The guys can make passes.
Definitely the best super speed race of the next gen era so far, right?
I would be hard pressed to say another one, but I will add this caveat. The Talladega playoff race last year was on NASCAR's top 75 list of races. And I know who won that race, but I couldn't tell you what made that race great, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like
you can. You know my memory.
Yeah, I feel like I'm missing something in that race. But so I mean, this was great. We talk a lot about the next gen car. You can't do this, you can't do that, and super speedways. I didn't see anything wrong with the next gen car tonight on terms of I'm couching it. I'm couching
Yeah,
it.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. In
Yeah.
terms of
The racing.
the racing, actual
Mhm.
racing, be able to make passes, making moves. There was one move at the end there that Busher made where he swooped down and passed somebody. Like that was great. And we saw guys go from the back to the front. It wasn't like the wide open, chaotic super speedway racing of a few years ago, but I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. And so I liked what I saw tonight. I thought that was really good. Now, there was another element of that we're gonna have to get into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, my expectations were that it was going to be 2x2 almost the entire night until somebody got out of line or made a mistake or blah blah blah, right? And the fact that they, as soon as stage 2 started, they got 3 wide, they were mixing it up, and then you were like, all right, the wreck's coming, just like in the Xfinity race, which was very predictable when those wrecks would come. So I had the same feeling watching up in the press box. I'm like, oh, this is brewing. It's gonna, any second now. And they just kept going and going and going. And finally, it's just one of those weird super speedway things where I don't really think like Christopher Bell necessarily did anything like super wrong with Ty Gibbs. I mean, he was pushing in the corner, but they all pushed
It's
in
a
the corner.
byproduct, right?
But
It's a super
yeah.
speedway racing. I mean, it's
And then they, that takes out Ty Gibbs, who takes out Ryan Blaney.
how
And
bad
then,
of a hit was that Blaney hit?
oh, that Blaney, that
Ooh.
was scary. It looked like it knocked the wind out of him for quite a while.
He needed a second. The wheels came off the ground.
Oh, I mean, that clearly was not the worst hit of the night, but yeah, I mean, that eliminated some guys, but there was still a lot of cars left at that point. Because when that wreck initially happens, I'm like, oh, that was like I thought it was going to be as many cars as last year that got knocked out.
Well, the funny thing is Harvick got in that wreck. Like Harvick got a piece of that wreck, and
Bowman did too.
Yeah, Bowman did too.
Yeah,
and Harvick was fine. Harvick was in the mix at the end and almost won the darn thing. And then and Bowman was running up there as well. So it was
it was weird. I mean, some of the cars they had, some of the cars had to be pushed back to pit road because of flat tires, and they lost more laps than like the cars that had significant contact. Some of them that had significant contact in that situation, but ultimately, Chris Buescher wins his third race in the last 5 weeks. What? Where did this come from? What? Why are you acting like you?
I just said, remember when I said he has a path to the round of 8 and someone mocked and ridiculed me?
That was after the first win.
After
the second win, I thought
foresaw things coming.
You foresaw it. Well, guess who didn't foresee it, guys?
You're going to this already?
Well, we just found this out tonight, and I probably should have been talking about this all year, because if you guys have been listening to the podcast, since last year, you'll remember that one of the themes from last year was in my preseason predictions. I had made a prediction that the biggest disappointment of the year would be Trackhouse Racing, so much so that they use it as bulletin board material. Justin Marks talked about it in one of the Trackhouse meetings in front of the entire company about how wrong I was, essentially, when they both made the playoffs. So until we just a few minutes ago, we were looking at our whole preseason thing from tonight. I don't know how nobody tweeted this to me all year or something, like, this is a terrible take. So guess what? My biggest disappointment
There's so many terrible
prediction of this year was RFK Racing. RFK Racing was I think I maybe looked at it at some point in the summer and thought, well, I could maybe see that. I mean, they, I don't think it was that far off. They hadn't won yet. They both were in the playoffs. So that's good. But boy, Trackhouse last year, I said, this year RFK for my biggest disappointments. Both times, both cars got in the playoffs.
I will say this. The good news is the glass is half full outlook of this is next year, teams will be lining up for you saying, Jeff, please pick us to be your disappointment. We are begging you to pick us.
Yeah, I'm going to get a call from Spire Motorsports.
Yeah, they're going to be throwing like gifts at, like just these all sorts of gifts. Would you like do you need a trip somewhere? Do you need a new car? How about a boat?
A boat?
Yeah,
wow. I live in Denver, so
you
I don't really know what I could do with a boat. I guess we have reservoirs, but anyway, I don't need a boat.
You need better picks is what you need.
So yeah, but speaking of bad picks,
I had a few.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go too far here.
No, let's just moving on.
You should have seen this guy when he was cackling with delight upon finding out that I had picked RFK for the biggest disappointment. And then I pull up, this is the same guy that picked Austin Cindric and Chase Briscoe to make the playoffs, and you had Kevin Harvick missing the playoffs. Yep. So let's not get too excited about.
Harvick almost missed the playoffs.
However, you did pick Daniel Suarez as your biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fine.
good. That's good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you
remember
got
when we
that
made the playoff picks because you and I were going back and forth on Briscoe and Harvick, and we are like, we gotta.
Well, we had 14 in the same picks.
Yeah.
I eventually had I got 12 right. You got 11 right. I think it's both our lowest since we've been working together in the 4 years. We've been getting 13 right, 14 right. This, I mean, look, okay, yes, we got Chase Elliott wrong. We got Alex Bowman wrong, but
who got
like who were you gonna? I mean, sorry, we didn't see that coming. You know what I mean?
Is there anybody that would have actually realistically thought that Chase Elliott was gonna miss the playoffs? There's no way.
Like, well, no, even after he came back, we thought.
You thought he was gonna win a race.
Yeah.
And he's winless and out of the playoffs for the first time in his career, by the way. He's made it every year since his rookie year. And I am shocked that they are not in the playoff, on the driver playoff, because they did make the owners playoff, which they both.
Are you though? Are you really like shocked based on how this summer went for them?
I mean,
they were never really.
I'm not looking at it just. Like, I mean, I'm not looking at it as the summer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yes, if you're just taking that as your sample size, then yeah, you could kind of see this because they weren't leading laps, they weren't winning stages, they weren't in contention for wins on a regular basis. They did have a really good average finish though, but that was just through pure grit almost. But I'm saying if you go back at the beginning of the year, this is a team that's made the Final Four since 2020. For the last 3 years. Like they are, you start the year when you make your playoff picks, you just take a Sharpie, and there are certain drivers you just write in. Elliott, Hamlin. I'll throw Truex on that list. I know we missed it last year. Logano. They're just some certain guys you just listen. They're going to figure it. They're going to get in on points. They're going to get in and win. He's one of them, and they didn't.
Well, to be honest, all 4 Hendrick cars is pretty much an automatic. Like when I'm starting my playoff picks, I'm like, all right, all 4 Hendrick cars is like the first thing I start with.
Yeah, I mean,
if you drive for Hendrick, you're going to make it. Now, again, like Bowman would have made it, and Chase would have made it. I mean, had they not missed those races for sure. I mean, Hendrick only ends up getting 2 cars. Why are you laughing?
Because how did they miss races?
Well, I'm still not. I mean, stuff happens. I mean,
they just need to listen to me more.
You're mad at Alex Bowman for racing a sprint car? Are you mad at Kyle Larson for racing a sprint car?
I'm not mad. I have no reason to be mad. They make their own choices, but they're in this position. And Elliott says once he is in this position because he missed 7 races this year.
Right.
And 6, and it was all 7 of those races were entirely preventable.
Well, I mean, it's not like he went snowboarding. He's like, okay, I'm going to break my leg today.
But when you do something, it's inherent risk, and when you go do it,
Again, I don't think snowboarding is that risky, but I think Kyle Larson in the Indy 500 is a lot more risky than snowboarding. But
I'm not going to make an argument about that, of course. But
anyway, look, they're not in it. Hendrick, 2 cars now. Elliott did make the owner playoff, so I think he's going to be. Here's the thing with Elliott. You absolutely know he's going to be highly, highly motivated to sort of, make it up to Rick Hendrick, right? Because we already know the owner's points is where the money comes from in the owner point playoffs. Now, nobody's, fans are not really going to care about the owner point playoffs. Elliott fans will, but that team is going to be like, they are going to be going for it because he's going to want to make it as far as he can. That's a lot of money for Hendrick. And the longer he makes it in, I think the better Chase would feel about, he cares about the team, I think, even more than himself in some ways.
Sure. He is very selfless. I will say that here's a question for you though. And we hear this a lot in the playoffs, like or in must-win situations or, regular season finales, like, oh, we're going to come motivated and hungry. And what does that really mean? Because like tonight, for example, like really through this last stretch, you could say the 9 team was very highly motivated and hungry. It's like they are already, I would presume, giving like max effort. So really, what does that mean? Like come Darlington, of the 9 team is all of a sudden like, man, we missed the playoffs, but we're going to go win that owners championship. Like they're already to that level. And it's still, I mean, as we saw at Watkins Glen, it's not necessary. As we saw throughout the summer, but I feel like we sometimes, and I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of this as anybody. We always like, oh, what are you guys going to do? What are you going to find out? This is a must-win situation. What are you going to do? It's like they're already doing it. Like,
But there's 2 different things because before they had to win, so it was all about winning, and they didn't care about like.
Sure.
But as you've said, I mean, they had the highest average
For a while, they did. Yeah.
finish since he had come back of anybody, I think, right?
It's tailed
For a
off.
while.
Yeah, for good. It's tailed off a little bit, but yeah.
So, how far can he make it in the playoffs? I would say pretty far.
Yeah, I mean,
He's going to make it past first round. They don't have to win.
No, they don't. Here's the thing with that though, is it goes back to what I said. Like they're finishing well, but their average finish was around 11th or so before they had the crash at Michigan, and then the running out of fuel at Watkins Glen.
Mm-hmm.
But they aren't going to get a lot of. They haven't got a lot of playoff points. They haven't got. They're missing out on stage points, that kind of thing, because they're not putting themselves in position to do that. So they're going to have to. They are going to have to find something. Getting on the first round, sure, they should absolutely go the first round. They should actually go the second round too when you look at the races, but they don't have that safety net they're accustomed to having, and that I think is going to be a difference. If you don't have speed, and they don't have a lot of speed in their race cars,
I think they have more than we think. I think it's been all about winning, and we just view it as like, well, Chase Elliott's not running up front leading laps, but if he's finishing top 5 and top 10 and staying out of trouble, that's a recipe to make it a couple rounds in the playoffs. And the next thing you know, I mean, I would not be surprised if they went on a little bit of a run here. I'm telling you.
I mean, sure. I mean, it could be circa with Tony Stewart in 2006, right? He won.
Well, I'm not saying that.
No,
I'm not saying they're going to win a bunch of.
No, but I'm saying, like, I mean, that's not far fetched. I mean, they could. I mean, they're a dominant team at times, and if anybody could go on a run of winning a bunch of races, it certainly is them. It just feels like overall something is off with that team.
Well, a team that did make it, Bubba Wallace, for the first time, is a playoff driver. Not very emotional afterwards. He said he was just so mentally drained that he didn't really have a lot, of feeling either way about it. But certainly a big celebration on pit road. I don't know if you guys saw my video. Michael Jordan, came over. I was talking to Denny Hamlin, and I went over to get his thoughts on Bubba making the playoffs because I'm doing a story. And, a hand reached over my head and like hit Denny on the hat. And it was like, good job, partner. And I look over and I was like, oh, there's Michael Jordan. So then I'm talking to Denny. I asked him my question, but it was one of those situations where, like, I've actually seen people do this before where they've asked a question, they like leave in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I think a friend of ours has done that before.
I've known a few people who've done that. I don't do that, but
I wasn't going to do that to Denny, but he's answering my question, but I'm also thinking, okay, well, I need him to end this question so I can run after Michael Jordan down pit road and try to get a video of him congratulating Bubba Wallace. So thank you, Denny, for the keeping the answer not super long. But yeah, it was really cool seeing down there because, MJ was like super pumped, congratulating Bubba Wallace, Booty Barker, shaking team members' hands. And then he's like telling Booty Barker, like, I'll see you next week. And Booty's like, you're coming to Darlington? He's like, yeah, man. So
MJ loves the races, man.
Yeah, he's into it right
now.
He's
Got nothing else going on. He's not on a basketball team anymore. He's got nothing but free time. He's in meetings more now.
He probably has things going on.
I mean, Denny said he's more in meetings now.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure he still has stuff to do.
I'm sure he's busy. I mean, I'm sure he's got stuff, but I'm sure he's got more free time now.
Yeah.
But to your point about Bubba, though, I mean, Bubba said this a couple weeks ago. Like, it was a lot of pressure, and he knew that like his cars are good enough. He needs to be good enough, and the pressure's on him. He really, there is no excuses. And I think relief is probably the best word. Is like this was the expectation of there are no excuses to be in the playoffs. We need to be in the playoffs, and that's the bare minimum. And so you did that, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Bubba said he was waking up at 2:30 in the morning this week, just super, super stressed. Obviously, he was turning down the interviews for TV even before the race. He was really tight, not wanting to talk. We didn't get, because he had done so the way it works is we get all the drivers in a media bullpen, around practice and qualifying, then come in before or after. If you do a Zoom with the media, during the week, which is usually like one or two drivers, then you get excused from talking at the track. So we had talked to Bubba on a Zoom, the media had early in the week. So he didn't talk. I don't think he probably did any media at the track before the race at all because he didn't do TV. He didn't come in here. So
Not that I saw.
yeah.
I don't know. Was he interviewed pre-race or on the qualifying? That's the only thing I could think of.
No, he didn't. No, he wasn't. He turned it down. He turned him down for qualifying and before the race today. So I think he was pretty tight. I think he was pretty wound, pretty tight. And
he has said before too. He's turned down radio pre-race stuff before a few times, and it's like he's just kind of gets in that zone of mentally just wants to focus, which to each their own.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously he was feeling the pressure and feeling the stress. So I think it was interesting though because he had done everything that he was going to be able to do. They didn't have a car to win. It seemed like, once Ty Gibbs is out with that crash, and Suarez after the first stage was already eliminated points wise. So it was like, okay, Bubba's in on points as long as there's no new winner. But late in that race, it's looking like, well, there's like 3 guys up there,
Briscoe,
4 guys up
Almirola, Priest,
Harvick.
Well, no, Harvick was already in, so it wouldn't have mattered.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it was the 3 other non-Harvick SHR cars.
Yeah.
Plus Elliott was in the mix. Plus Bowman was in the mix.
Bowman was there,
and that's just off the top of my head.
Yep. Yeah. So it was like, okay, well, and he was far. There was going to be nothing he could do.
He was a non-factor. I mean, largely non-factor.
So he said he said when he saw Buescher cross the line and win, it was the first time he got off the gas before the finish line at a super speedway. He was like, I'm good. I'm done. Like, I don't need to push it here. Like I'm done. I'm good.
He's going to sleep good tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a relief. Now, so here's the thing though. So how far can he go? Because first round, I don't know about Darlington for him, but Kansas, he's won at Kansas.
Yep.
He's good at Bristol.
Yep, he's decent at Darlington.
So, I mean, first round stacks up well, and you've got to avoid mistakes in the first round.
And the other thing with them too is they don't have a lot.
They don't have it. Yeah,
he's starting towards. I don't know if is he the last seed. If not, he's towards the bottom for sure.
He's got to be. I haven't seen the seedings yet, but he's got to be either last or
he's close to the bottom, right? If not.
We're seeing in the chat. We're on YouTube Live right now for those listening, and you guys are saying that Bubba finished 5th at Darlington earlier this year.
Yep.
So
yeah, he runs well though.
So yeah. Now, okay. So let's say he gets to the next round. Well, you've got Talladega in it, and you would say, well, the Roval's going to be questionable for him, but he just went out and did really well at Watkins Glen. He said he was more proud of himself for how he performed at Watkins Glen than actually winning at Kansas. That was a big statement he felt for him.
And Texas too.
You've got Texas,
mile and a half. Yeah. They're very good.
So he could get. I don't know how far he's going to go with no playoff points really, but it's possible he could make somewhat of a run. But I actually think. Now, check me on this because I get the hyperbole sometimes. This might be the most competitive playoff field. It's got to be one of them.
Because last year when everybody went in with a win?
But here's the thing.
Blaney, even though he won the All-Star race?
Like, okay, so until, let's say Buescher, right? Okay. You would have said, before Buescher won these 3 races, they said, Buescher and RFK, they might not make it very far like I did, even after he won that first one, right? Well, now I'm like, okay, he's got playoff points. He won Bristol last year. They can win on big ovals. They can do good on road courses. Keselowski is.
I swear that was my argument weeks ago, and you laughed at me.
I'm agreeing with you. So what I'm saying is those are 2 strong cars.
Sure.
The Hendrick cars, and we'll talk about our final 4 picks later in this episode. The Hendrick cars that made it, Byron and Larson, they're both strong. The Gibbs cars, you have to take them extremely seriously, including Bell, even though he really doesn't have that many points. We saw what he did last year, won 2 elimination races, made the final 4.
Dangerous guy in the playoffs.
Kyle Busch, you don't know what to expect out of him in the playoffs. I mean, he could do something. Harvick, he doesn't have a win, but at the same time, you're like, well, wait a minute now. Harvick could easily, as good as they are at maximizing their results, they could do something. Chastain, we still haven't felt like, we're like, well, they're off, but they could do something. So, aside from McDowell, no offense, Stenhouse. Yeah. There's some pretty good.
I think you're right. If you compare it to last year, you had a lot of guys. This was the year was parity and everything. You had a lot of guys when Cindric wins a race. You had Daniel Suarez. You had Chase Briscoe. You had guys win some races. And you're like, okay, what are they going to do? I do think you're right. I think this year we have seen an evolution of over a stretch, it's been Hamlin, it's been Larson, it's been Truex, it's been Bell at one point because he did lead the standings for a handful of races. Byron, like you just see a group of guys, 5, 6 guys that throw Kyle Busch in that mix of like, it just seems like kind of a rotating cast of, oh, they're on it right now and they're dominant. And there really hasn't been that clear cut guy. Now I know Truex got hot late, but it does feel a little bit more wide open and competitive. And to your point, like Brad Keselowski doesn't have a win this year. Great. Well, he's actually running really, really well, even outside of non-super speedways.
Right.
On the ovals, whether it's Michigan, whether it's New Hampshire or Richmond, he is running very well, and RFK is really running.
Keselowski finished 5th in regular season points before the reset.
Yeah,
and Buescher was 6th.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't even talked about Logano and Blaney. We didn't even mention Logano and Blaney.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought them up because I think it's very dangerous to call them the weak. I don't know what you want to call them, like guys. It's just like you haven't really seen a lot out of Penske lately.
Right.
It's really hard to have a lot of confidence in that team, that organization. They at times look good and they look like, okay, they're on the right path. And then other times it's like, it's not. But I went back and I looked at what we were saying last year about Logano and we kind of wrote them off. Like, this team just doesn't seem to have it. We'll see, but you can't count them out, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you don't know. I mean, maybe they find something like they did last year and they get through round one. And then as the races go on, they start clicking it off. But it's hard to have confidence in them for sure.
I mean, Logano said yesterday, he's like, well, I've won championships before where we went in and we didn't really have the speed to start the playoffs, but we hung around long enough to find the speed.
Yep.
And, he's won both of his championships by using that first race of the 3rd round to get there, having extra time, and then winning it again. So, you can't look at Logano or Blaney even as especially the way they can run it.
You can't run them off.
I mean, yeah,
you can't. Like, they're good. I mean, if they are both very, very capable drivers. The one thing I will say about Blaney, and it's the elephant in the room, is that team in the playoffs historically have made a lot of mistakes. A year ago at Homestead and Las Vegas, Blaney should have had top 3, 4, 5 finishes. He does those and he finishes where he should have finished, and he goes on to the championship 4, but he made self-induced mistakes that were just inexcusable, and it cost him. We've seen that happen the year prior at Kansas, and so he has got to get over that. Like you can't be riddled with mistakes, and that's the big thing about Blaney. I mean, I'm purposely not picking Blaney for my championship 4 because I feel like I pick him every year, and he just continually falls short. It's like, when is he going to get over that hump? And we're still waiting.
Well, should we go ahead and make our championship 4 picks now, or
sure,
would you rather wait?
No, you go first because I'm trying to figure out my last one.
Mine are really obvious, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb and it's going to be super boring. But, for me, it's Truex and Hamlin and Byron and Larson, because, and Larson is the one out of those where he was sort of like my 4th guy in. But when you look at the stats, Larson and that team have, there's been times when they should have finished races and they didn't. But, they're actually running really well.
He's got more top 5s this year than anybody, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was something like that. I was looking yesterday when we were getting ready for our capsules.
Yeah.
It just I think Larson, once he gets in the playoffs, he'll be fine, and they'll have speed, and he knows how to capitalize on it. I feel pretty good about where JGR is at right now. I don't feel as confident about, a Kyle Busch, or confident enough for the RFK cars or Chastain. So to me, Byron is great. But ultimately I think, I don't know. I feel like it could be one of the Toyotas that wins it. And so I think I might go with Hamlin. Just how odd would it be that the way the season unfolds, Hamlin finally gets the championship, and it's at the track where he lost the 25 points and this whole thing earlier this year with Chastain, and you come back there and it just seems like they've been sort of like lying in the weeds.
Sure.
But they're doing really well at the right time. They know what they're doing. I just feel like I picked him at the start of the year as like the driver of this year. I don't think he's been the driver of the year so far. I don't really know who has, but maybe Truex.
It's Truex, I think.
Well, Byron too, but
yeah, I mean,
but anyway, depending on how the playoffs go, that's gonna be my final four: Truex, Hamlin, Larson, Byron. Hamlin wins. What do you got?
Yeah, it's really hard. Like, I really don't want it to come down to like we're gonna have 2 JGR versus 2 Hendrick guys because I feel like we've been down that road before. But going through the list, I'm sitting here looking at it. It comes down to confidence, right? And the RFK cars are running very, very well, but Brad still doesn't have a win, and that's a little concerning. Chris is a sleeper, someone to keep an eye on. But really, this is only the second time he's in the playoff. Really, the first time he comes in with expected to do something. I don't know. I think him making the round of 8 is good. Chastain, it's hard to have confidence right now where that team is at. We talked about Blaney and Logano, Harvick, gritty finishes, but you got to win. To me, you've got to win. Kyle Busch is the unknown. Like,
what about Bell?
I'm getting to Bell.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting to Bell. I purposely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so Kyle Busch is the unknown. Like, I could see him doing great.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him going the other direction. And so I don't know. So my final four, like you, I've got Truex and Larson. I think they're slam dunks. Byron, little leery on that, but I have them in my final four. They're up and down. You look at the results this summer.
I feel pretty good about Byron.
They've had speed, but if you've seen the result, like they are up. They are up. They're down. Their finishes are bad. Like, I mean,
Here's what I really like about Byron. He has gained sort of this veteran composure where when things go wrong in races, they stay in it.
Yep.
What was their race? Was it Vegas this
year?
Kansas.
He starts on the pole or something, like lap 3.
They were 3 laps down at one point, I think, this year.
He doesn't melt down on the radio. He doesn't bemoan. He doesn't cry. It's just
they stay in it. They stay steady.
I agree. I mean, I agree with you on that.
That's what you need for playoffs, because that's what Jimmy and Chad used to always do. They'd be like, oh my gosh, they're done. And they'd pull out this, top 5 finish. You're like, what?
I don't disagree. He wins at Atlanta this year in the summer, right? And then he goes 24th, 14th, 21st, 35th, 14th, wins at Watkins Glen. Like, yes, if this team is on, they are on. And I think they could win the championship. Don't forget they won at Phoenix earlier this year, too. I have them in my championship 4. I do. But I do think there's a little bit of a red flag, but I think they're going to be okay.
Okay.
My 4th pick is Bell.
So we have the same 3, and then you're putting Bell over Hamlin.
Correct. And
what's your reasoning on Bell?
I think Bell's going to get hot. I've said this before. Like, this team, he is so good. And I had him, I think, as my champion going into the year. So I don't feel like I can go off of that. This is a guy we forget led the point standings at one point. They have to stop making mistakes. They have the speed. They haven't executed well. When things go wrong, things kind of snowball for them a little bit. But I look at last year, and I just think that this team and Adam Stevens is such a good crew chief. And Bell has shown that he can win anywhere.
They've been so quiet this year, though.
How are they? I mean, like, yes and no. You're right. I mean, you're right.
You always like to talk about. You'll be like, oh, this team hasn't won
sure.
Like Chase Elliott hadn't won a real race. I mean, Bell won on dirt.
Sure.
And you're talking about, well, they've got to win.
He should, and he should have won other races this year. I don't doubt that. But at the beginning of the year, they were knocking off top 5 finishes, and I think they're going to find that again. And I do feel like come the playoffs, we tend to get that one team, that one driver who kind of hits on it a little bit. You didn't expect them to do it. I think that's the one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just not for them to do that again. I mean, they had to win 2 elimination races last year to pull themselves off the heap twice.
Sure,
that's a tall order. You were asking a lot.
He also finished, but I just want to point out about Bell finished regular season 4th. That's pretty.
I mean, yeah.
I agree. I mean, like this, there are red flags. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk. I just feel like it's just going with the tried and true. I think this is a little bit outside, but I think that this team is dangerous.
Why do you not have Are you just saying that Bell's going to outperform Hamlin, or something's going to happen to Hamlin? What's the because here I am picking for the championship, and you're like, no, he's not going to make the Final Four. So where do we disagree there? Like, what's going to happen to that team?
I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen. I just think it's going to be a performance thing. It's going to come down to who can win and who can execute. And for whatever reason, I have a little bit more confidence in Bell, and I think Hamlin's got a very good case as well. I mean, it took a Ross Chastain miracle last year to keep him out of the championship four.
Yeah.
But Hamlin's got 2 wins this year. Like, it's not, at times they look really, really good, but it's not like they're crushing everybody.
So, it's interesting though, because we can almost say for a fact we can't, but in round one, because we can project the performance all we want, but what happens is, just like Darlington last year, right?
Sure.
Weird things happen, like and each of these races has something weird that happens, and I think one thing that you can see sort of the hallmark of this, it is harder than ever to overcome a mistake in NASCAR in the Cup Series.
Yeah, it's hard to pass.
Yeah, if you're running up front and you get a speeding penalty, or you have a spin and you got to go to the back and try to come back through, or whatever, flat tire and you pit,
Yeah.
you're kind of done in terms of like winning the race. Maybe you rally back for a top 10. You can't drive really. I mean, we don't really see people drive through the field like they used to. Gosh, who was I talking to now? I had a conversation with somebody, and I was totally thinking about mentioning this on the podcast, and I can't remember who I was talking to. Sorry, whoever this was. But like, when is the last time that somebody overcame a pit road speeding penalty to win? I don't know the answer, but like it felt like it used to be routine where you'd be like, so and so won the race today after they overcame a speeding penalty on pit road and they rallied back. I'm not sure that's happened all year this year.
I feel like it has. I mean,
Yeah,
I will say at Watkins Glen, Mike McDowell had not,
but he didn't come back to win.
Well, that's because they ended up blowing the motor. But I mean, I'm saying he did.
He wasn't going to win.
He got back in the top 10. I mean, I agree. I agree with your premise that it is much tougher, and we saw it at Martinsville.
Oh, you're saying Kyle Busch at Fontana? People in the chat. Well, we should do the chat for every episode. They have all the answers.
I've said this, and you say no. I said we should do live video all the time, and you say no.
Well, we can't because we're usually not in the same place.
We can still do live.
We'll be in the same place only like what, 2 more times this whole. Three more times.
We can still do it.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, there are examples. I have to go back and look, but it is difficult. It is more difficult than before. And we saw, Martinsville's the biggest example is Ryan Preece dominates that race, starts on the pole, leads 141 laps or something like that, and then gets that pit road speeding penalty and just is,
And Almirola, was it Almirola at New Hampshire? No,
I had the tire come off in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and they couldn't. Something happened to Almirola at some point when he was doing really well, and maybe that was it. And that was it. Like, that was the end of their chance.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah, I mean, he crashed.
Or am I thinking of somewhere else?
Yeah, I feel like you're thinking of somewhere else.
Oh, sorry. Well,
that's all good.
I have this weird memory. Jordan has all the answers, all the. It's all right in here. He can like recall, like, oh yes, this person won this race in 2006. Don't you remember that, Jeff? And I'll be like, I'm sure I was at that race, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, so yeah, I just think it's really going to come down to mistakes. Obviously, the first round always comes down to mistakes anyway. But if you can somehow just,
that's all it's about. I mean,
well, the first round is.
Yeah, I would say it's almost the first 2 rounds because of Talladega and the Roval tends to be.
Well, you can't really control them.
I mean, even hell, look at Texas last year. That's crazy.
All the tires.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. Especially the first round, and I think that's the greatest thing. It is about survival. It is, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Just finish where your car is capable. If you've got a 10th place car, finish 10th.
Easier said than done at Darlington.
No, I'm not saying that, but I mean, like last year though, it was like everybody was having attrition issues. It was just like, get through there and don't put yourself in a hole. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big thing. And especially when you've got playoff points and everything, it's like you have a little bit more of a safety net. You also have the opportunity to say, listen, we know if we just go out and run decently, we're going to be fine. And that's the big thing. And that's why for Stenhouse, for McDowell, for Bubba, you go to Darlington or you go to Bristol or you have one bad race. It's like all of a sudden you're in must win mode, like, and that's the big thing, and
Yeah.
especially in round one and to a lesser degree in round two.
Daytona, it's just sort of like this magical, scary, terrifying place all at the same time, right? There's been great moments here. There's been horrible moments here, and I really, really, really like it more and more every year as the cutoff race. I think that's
It's
genius.
phenomenal. Love the idea.
It's the perfect wild card ending, but it's also like completely just terrifying and tense in a way, right?
Yeah,
And it's like you think about what's on the line and how hard people are willing to go, and then the stuff that can happen. And part of the attraction I mean, let's talk about like when they were racing three wide, it's so fascinating and compelling and thrilling because it's like what could happen at any moment. And when there's the possibility of that, one of our episodes was the titillation of the big one, I think, for Talladega one year. That is like that you don't even need the wreck, but the possibility of the wreck is insane. But then sometimes when you get a wreck that's so violent and scary, you're just like,
Ooh,
oh, okay, I'm
good.
done. I'm
Yeah.
done. So yeah, like the way that this race ended tonight with the overtime, uh, you're like, oh gosh, we just saw this Ryan Priest wreck, which we're about to talk about, and dude, you're like, I really don't have the appetite at this point for any more craziness. Like, can we just get this race just done cleanly? So it was nice to have one overtime, and that's it. But we were sitting. I started the race in the press box. I came back down for the last 20 laps or whatever. We were sitting next to each other. We saw this Priest wreck, and I think our reaction was the same. Like we saw it live, and you're just like, oh, okay, first of all, it's like, did I just see that car flip in the air as many times live as I thought that we did? Like that's not even physically possible. We've seen barrel rolls where a car rolls over, catches on something, and then rolls and roll flips or whatever. But the way that that car went airborne and just did like those crazy pirouettes in the air without ever landing first, then lands and is worse. Dude, that was so freaking scary. And then when you look at the replay and you see the roof hatch gone almost right away, and the top of the cockpit exposed, the window net flying loose and just sort of flapping around, and he's still rolling, and then it lands at one point on the roof flat. Um, I mean, I'm so glad we saw the tweet that he tweeted uh, before we started this podcast, and we don't know as we're doing this podcast. So we all we know is that he was taken to the hospital, but we did see the tweet from him. So, but just man, uh, that was very, very worrisome. I really, and I don't know the logistics. They've done such a good job of taking out grass at places where grass shouldn't be. Um, but that is still an odd place to have the grass in a way, because when you look at that wreck, like he's flat, he gets booted out of line, he's going across, he hits the grass, and then when he goes over the lip of the grass, the air gets underneath the car, underneath that flat bottom, and that immediately lifts it up. And it kind of reminded me of when Keselowski got flipped at Atlanta by Carl that one year, and they had gone back. The conclusion to all that was that Keselowski had a little bit of damage, and it allowed the air to get underneath the car and suck it up. And that's what seemed to happen to Priest's car. It got it up and launched it so quickly. And I mean, to see a car go that high, and then the violence of the flips, just stunning. So I'm sure NASCAR is going to take a real, real, real long look at that one, but it's also very worrisome that could happen in the first place.
It's the unfortunate byproduct of super speedway racing, which is I love it. I love super speedway racing. I think it's exciting. I think it really showcases driver skill in a lot of respects, because it is an art, and I don't think drivers get enough credit for. It's you watch it and it's like a big game of chess, and I really, really enjoy races at Daytona, at Talladega, and I guess Atlanta now too, But the problem is when you do have wrecks like this, and that's not something you see at a lot of other tracks on the regular. You know, it's unfortunate, and I mean, thankfully Ryan got out of the race car. You know, that's great. We'll see. You know, if he checks out everything, I hope he does. That was bad. NASCAR's been really, they have made updates to this car a lot quicker than anyone can say, and that's the good thing. And Kyle Larson, Ryan Preece, when Kyle Larson this year at Talladega involved in a really ugly wreck, and they made adjustments. And so there's the next super speedway races until October. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to walk down the road. I don't know. I don't know the physics of it. I don't know all of that stuff, but they are going to study it. And I will say that NASCAR, I feel like, does a good job of going back and looking at it and saying, hey, okay, we can do this better. We need to do this. This might be one of those incidents. And I don't know. The big thing to me is the two things you touched on. And is the window net and then the roof flap. And here's the question I have, and I don't have the answer to this, is have we seen that happen before in other wrecks and we just didn't notice it? Is that a common thing? Is that is that supposed to be? I don't know. It just seems like that would be that's my big question, the area of concern. And especially when we looked at the video and we were watching it really slow motion, that at the end there was an impact. We came down on the driver's side, but the way he hit kind of was more on the wheels instead of like flat or flush, and that was thankfully. And so
but then at the very end, after that, when it goes the last time before it goes back on the wheels, it was pretty much flat.
Yeah. That was
and you're like,
that was the one. That was the one that really caused me to go, whoa, because that was like it was like the capper, right? The cherry on top of the sundae.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what I mean. You can talk about the grass, and I don't. Yeah, probably. We've talked about this before. Drivers have said like there should be no grass around racetracks.
Well, the thing is, okay, if that's a flat asphalt surface, and I get there's reasons why, I don't know if it's drainage or whatever it is. But if that's a flat asphalt surface, that car just slides. The thing that made it go airborne is when it got over the lip.
Was the transition, yeah.
Yeah, when it bumped over and it got enough air underneath. So especially at the super speedways, you just gotta, I don't know. It just makes me real nervous that's still, that's still a thing. Shouldn't that be addressed? Or, I mean, I don't know. They always say like, oh, we have the safety people come in and look at things, but why would there be? I guess that's part of the chicane.
It's the bus stop,
but
the road course.
Could you not paint that or something? I don't know. I don't know what you do. Put up cones for the Rolex.
Yeah.
I don't know that it needs to be grass. I know you need to have track limits in some places, but you could still do. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, no. To your point, if you look at Watkins Glen,
I mean, again, I get that that's part of the road course. I get that that's why that's there. But you don't. Do you need the grass?
That's what I'm saying, though. It's like, to your point. Look at Watkins Glen. Don't they have the bus stop there? And is there grass to that bus stop there? Is there dirt?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But that's also not a super speedway.
No, I was just trying to think of a comparison for bus stops. So I mean, it's something to be looked at.
Yeah, some people. I was in the chat. I hadn't been looking at the chat. Some people are saying the artificial turf. Like we've actually seen that be successful at like places like Charlotte Motor Speedway, where that used to be grass, and when they put the Roval in, I think they used that field turf or whatever. And we've seen guys slide across that, and it's much smoother over the Legends course and stuff.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's a Roval, so when you're sliding through that, I mean, the speeds are a heck of a lot lower. So. And we also saw a car flip.
Yeah.
We saw Chris Buescher flip.
That's true.
In the Charlotte Motor Speedway infield last year. So I don't pretend to have the answers for this because it's a very complicated question. And
right.
And NASCAR has shown in the past, like it was damage to Priest's car when he was going through there already, and that made it more susceptible, for air to catch it. I don't know. But
but that at a super speedway, you're gonna have damaged cars at high speed.
Listen, I mean, the drivers will tell you that there shouldn't be grass anywhere. And when it comes to matters of safety, I always go with what they say because they tend to. You can never be too safe, and if that's what they feel they need, then so be it. But it also comes down to like drainage and other issues as well.
Yeah. I feel kind of weird talking about this because again, I'm not, this just happened. I'm not a safety expert. It just feels like a lot of times the grass seems to be a culprit in these situations.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering what can be done. But
Yeah, that's our job to ask questions.
well, I don't have the answer, so I'd rather have the answer. But
Well, we have to ask the question to get the answer.
yeah, well, we're just asking a YouTube thing and listeners at over 1 a.m. at this
It's already
point.
one. I still got it right. Oh my goodness.
So we can talk real quick before we move on. We did have some news before the race today, although you had already done an interview with Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch makes it official. Last year you'd said, okay, I'm stepping away from full-time racing, but there was sort of this feeling like, well, hopefully he'll heal up and he'll do a one-off. And
he didn't want to walk away. He wanted to hold out. I think, for lack of a better term, he wanted to hold out hope that he could return and race, whether it was a one-off, whether it was a multitude of races, or maybe he's healthy again and 23XI puts him in a car. He wasn't ready to walk away. Period.
Well, I mean, and you can tell it was emotional for him, but at some point, I think he realizes the best for the best, and I think that the way he looks at the Pocono wreck, when the Pocono wreck happened with Kurt, you're like, man, what a terrible way to go out. A qualifying crash at Pocono. But what he said today kind of makes, you feel like he has a different perspective on it now, which is, hey, I was going for a pole at Pocono. He was trying to join this mythical 30-30 club.
It's actually a pretty cool thing. It's
30 poles, 30 wins.
Yeah, and there's only 20 guys in NASCAR history have done it, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. is not one of those guys, by the way. So it's a pretty. When I talked to him and he mentioned it, and I thought about it, like, really, is that really a thing? Because and I actually did a little bit of research, talked to a NASCAR statistician, and was like, oh, that is a thing, and only 20 guys in NASCAR history. So kudos to him. He was 2 poles short, and he knew. And Kurt has what you say. Kurt knows history, and he knows his place in it, and that's something he wanted. So.
Well, it stinks in some ways, but at least, he was probably this was probably going to be the last year anyway.
Yes.
And so, as he has said multiple times, it moved up his timeline. He still would have liked to have a better ending.
Yeah.
Like a whole goodbye tour.
No whatever athlete wants their career to end for reasons outside of their control.
Sure.
And especially for him, he had won a race. He was in the playoffs. That team was running very well. He was doing exactly what he was hired to do. He was invited to bring leadership and guidance and produce on the racetrack, and he was doing all of those things. And this was the Kurt. I don't want to say 2.0. Are we like Kurt 4.0? This was the veteran Kurt who kind of accepted his role, and he was doing all of those things. And he had a home, and it's gone. And it's really unfortunate that his career ended that way. And he seems at peace with it. He says he's at peace with it. He seemed he wasn't when we spoke. He was pretty straightforward about it. He's kind of accepted it, of that there's nothing I can do. It is what it is, and he's found at least some solace in the fact that he is still a valued member of the 23XI racing team. He is still involved in going to sim sessions and debriefs and taking notes with drivers. He's a driver coach. He's mentoring other drivers. He was he's an off-season test this year, working with Christopher Bell's team. Like, he has this kind of big mentor role, if you will, that is really well suited for him, and he is very much enjoying it.
Speaking of 23XI, let's pick your brain on this, Jordan, because I know you've been working hard to try to get to the bottom of what's going on here. This was the week that the rumors really heated up about, wait a minute now, like, is 23XI, they're talking to Ford. Could they really switch to Ford? Could, Denny said on his podcast, his contract's all ready, but he can't sign it yet because of 23XI's future being in flux. What's going to happen here? And so, but then, it sounded like when you were talking to people this weekend, there's a lot of confidence that, 23XI will remain with Toyota. So what can you tell us I'm not saying you need to report this, but
No,
I'm sure Reddit will pick up your comments as they did when you talked on Sirius. But what can you tell us, Jordan?
I think it's fair to say this is part of the negotiating process, and this has been a much longer, protracted negotiating process than anybody thought. Everybody involved thought this was going to be settled much sooner. This has gone on. It's part of it is that Denny and 2311 and everybody over there, they're trying to figure out where they fit on everything, but they have certain things they want from Toyota, and it's back and forth. Ultimately, from everybody I spoke to, and no one said this was definitive by any means, but I would say it's confident, highly likely that 2311 and Denny Hamlin stay with Toyota. It would, at this point, it seems like all parties involved want to make this happen. Steve Loletta, the president of 2311 today, I asked him, hey, are you going to be with Toyota next year? And he's like, yeah, I don't see no changes that I know of. I'm paraphrasing a little bit because I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but that's kind of what he said. And David Wilson, TRD's president, said, we think they're going to be back, and we're happy with things, and this is part of the process, and we get it. And in terms of resolution, I think we're going to know something here in the next week to 2 weeks or so. It's going to happen pretty quick, but I think at the end of the day, 2311 is a very valued property for Toyota. And I think, frankly, if you look at the landscape, it doesn't make sense for 2311 to go anywhere else, because if they go somewhere else, they are not going to necessarily be in an alliance, not guaranteed. Let me just preface that. There's a good chance they wouldn't be in an alliance with somebody on a different side. And they're very tight with Joe Gibbs Racing, and they're there. And I just think when you take a look at all of this, it makes a lot of sense for this relationship to continue.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Well, what about on the Stewart-Haas end? Because we also had heard that, is Stewart-Haas, is Gene Haas, are they looking to sell charters?
Sure.
That was a thing that people were talking about.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about that element of everything that's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt about this. There was a report out there that potentially 1 or 2 charters could be sold. From the conversation I had with people, no. And I will say that Stewart-Haas Racing issued a statement to me. They are committed to having 4 charters next year and fielding 4 teams. And there's no truth to the rumors or speculation or whatever you want to call it about them selling a charters and reducing down from 4 Cup Series teams. The question with Stewart-Haas Racing is if they're going to continue as a 4-car team, which they say they will, and we'll take them at face value. There's no reason to doubt that. Contractually, too, by the way, because there are contractual matters with Ford and everything else you have to consider about that. Who's going to drive that 10 car next year?
Right.
And that's the big unknown right now. I mean, from what I've been told, certainly sounds like Eric Almirola is not coming back. Smithfield is not coming back. I don't know who drives that car next year. I don't. There's you pick somebody right now because there's some names you hear, but it's the pickings are. Things are weeding out, right? I mean, Michael McDowell was a leading candidate for a while, but he in front row and he's going back there, or not front row. I always want to say furniture row. I get confused.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
It tries me. It always catches me. So it's going to be great. It's going to be very interesting to see. It's a great question of who's going to be in that 10 car.
Yeah, you've got the 10 open and 31 open, and still sort of. I'm not saying it's late yet, but I mean, typically rides that. I mean, those rides should be filled at some point pretty soon, you would think. So
I will say that I can report that. I'll report like a colleague has signed a driver for the 31 car, or they have signed a driver for next year for one of their Cup cars, presumably the 31 car. Don't know who it is. They say
you just know that they signed somebody.
They have told me that they have signed somebody for that car and the deal is done, but I don't know who that driver. I don't know who it is. I got maybe an idea, an inkling, but yeah, I don't know. Heard some weird names.
Interesting.
We'll see. Silly season, man.
Well, I've been kind of avoiding this, but I'm afraid we may have to talk about the was it a good race poll.
I have a championship belt at home.
You haven't won the championship.
I won the regular season championship. Excuse me. Put some respect on it.
Well, you haven't officially until this pick coming up, because this is still. I mean, I could.
But I win the tiebreaker. So.
Well, if I beat you by like 30 points in the tiebreaker. Anyway, So last week, to refresh your memory, I was on a 6-race winning streak, and Jordan reduced his guess by a full 20 points after my guess for me going first. And as a result, he got me by like 1% because he listened to my guess first. So he won.
Astutely.
And now, unfortunately, unless I now I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, I'm going to have to dress like Jordan for Daytona or whatever." Not true, because we still have the full, rest of the season to go for the playoffs. But unfortunately, it looks like you're going to be up 1-0 to start the playoffs again, unless I can get within 30 points or whatever Big Joe Wall, who keeps our score, said. So I hate that.
Sunday school teacher? Really?
He's reading the comments right now for those of you listening. Anyway, Jordan, don't be distracted by the comments.
I'm actually trying to see if anybody's putting some guesses out here. I'm trying to do some strategy here. So if you've got some guesses on what you think I should guess, please feel free to put that in the chat.
Oh, you can't cheat. No, don't look at the chat. Don't look at the chat. Just say what you think. Oh, people, now the guesses are coming.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first one's in line with what I was thinking. That's okay. That's a good one. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning. Yeah. Okay. So listen, I think I'm gonna go 83. I was gonna say the low 80s, and then plus it puts you in a box.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna have to go way low, which isn't gonna happen.
All right. Let me ask the people in the chat as well. So here's there's two things I could do here, right? I could just give my real guess. What did you say, 83?
83.
I could give my real guess and just try to win for whatever, but I'll lose on the tiebreaker.
69.
Or
nice.
I could go over, 25 or 28 points or whatever away from his guess just to try on a total long shot. But I think that's stupid anyway, because nobody's going to say 50%, 50-something% for this race. It was way better than that. So I'm screwed. So I might as well just guess and just try to win. So I will Prices Right you. That's what people say I should do, just to get the cheap win, just to start it on a bad note for you on the playoffs, even though it was a tie.
Aw, thanks, Julie.
There's only 246 people in the chat room right now. It's 1:30 in the morning. By far 90-something% of people are going to be listening to this on the podcast.
Bob Barker died
when
today?
you say, yes, Bob Barker died. Where have you been?
Working.
Okay. So you can't just respond to people in the chat like we're just chatting on YouTube Live and with no context. Anyway, I'm going to Prices Right, R.I.P. Bob, and Bob Barker, not our friend Bob.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, Price is Right and honor Bob Barker.
Yeah, so I'm going to say 83.1.
Cool.
So awesome. I win. There's no doubt it's going to be higher than 83.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm on the regular season title.
That's fine. I'm going to.
So I can show up at Darlington next week with the championship belts.
I'm not even going to be there. So who are you going to be celebrating for? What championship belts? You see Martin Truex Jr.? Does he look like he enjoys the regular season championship when he won at Richmond all those years ago?
Well, that's because of Derek Cope.
I didn't see the pictures from tonight. So.
The Derek Cope caution that cost him a win. That was, I probably should have had. So
we didn't talk about Truex winning the regular season title, by the way. Is that?
I think I don't think we make a big, and I'm guilty of this too. I don't think we make a big enough deal in motorsports of winning the regular season title. You talk about, playoff format, everyone, there's a lot of people that complain about it and it's gimmicky, this, that, and whatever. But I like it for a lot of reasons. But we still have the element of consistency wins championships. It's no longer race 1 through 36. It's now race 1 through 26. It matters. And when you factor in the playoff points that come with it and the bonuses and everything, it matters. Ask Chase Elliott the last couple of years what that meant to him, because it helped him get through the rounds. I think winning the regular season title is a huge accomplishment. And I think the longer we go with this format, and I don't want it to change, and because I like consistency in terms of, year to year and everything. I think we are going to go back and start appreciating, like, wow, man, that guy won 3 regular season titles, right? That guy made the championship 3 times and he's got 3 regular season championships. Now, I don't think they're going to be valued the same way as maybe a championship overall, but I still think they're going to hold a lot of merit.
I think Final Four appearances.
I think that's going to be part of it too.
Still vastly outnumbered. I mean, again,
I don't disagree. I mean, I think I agree in the grand scheme. I think championship 4 appearances are going to be like Final Four versus, basketball.
I think the regular season thing's a big deal just purely for the 3 wins worth of bonus points.
I mean, I agree, but I also think it demonstrates that you were the best team, most consistent team week in and week out for 26 races. That's not easy to do. And it's not like you can back into that by any means. It's like you go out there and freaking earn it.
Yeah. Well, so let's see. You're going to be at Darlington, Southern 500. For those of you going there, look for Jordan. I'll be at Kansas, and then we'll both be at Bristol.
Look forward to that.
To do another one of these live podcasts at the wee hours of the morning, whenever that will be.
I love that race.
So, yeah, I love the race too, since there's no dirt on it, obviously. Well, I don't know if I'll love it this year with the short track package as bad as it is.
You gonna wrap? Could you please wrap?
No, there's no reason to wrap.
Remember last year you killed a bug?
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else we should talk about, guys, in the chat real quick before we go?
Xfinity Series race? Anything?
Xfinity Series race?
Yeah.
What about it? What happened?
Anything jump out to you in that?
A lot of crashes. I saw a comment that said Junior Motorsports didn't mess up the race with teamwork because there was not enough Junior Motorsports cars up at the front.
Wow.
Somebody said that on Twitter. So
somebody chose violence today.
Yeah. Well,
Parker Kligerman, nice job rallying back and put himself. Last few weeks have been really good, and
yeah, he's looks like he's gonna make the playoffs now.
Yeah, and he's got a contract extension. Good for Parker. So yeah, that was a good race. That was a really good race on Friday. I like that.
Yeah, it was.
And then Truck Series Milwaukee Mile.
We haven't seen it yet.
No, but just Milwaukee's back, which
That's
I think
cool.
It's a cool story. And that track was it's one of the oldest in the country, and then it was on the basically shut down, and now NASCAR's going back there, at least with the Truck Series, and I think IndyCar's going back there. It sounds like so. That's cool for them.
You ever been there?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do you think? I've never been there.
It's old and historic. It's
you're like, oh, Milwaukee Mile's back. Oh, what do you think?
I mean, like, there's two different things. Like, I mean, do I want it back? Yeah. I mean, are you talking like in terms of amenities and bells and whistles? Like, no. I mean, it's not that, but a few tracks are, and so I've kind of evolved where I don't know if we need all these bells and whistles, all these racetracks. I think if you go to racetracks that put on good racing, that first and foremost should be it, and then you figure out the rest.
The last thing, let's just bring up real quick because people in the chat suggested that they want to hear our thoughts on GMS, the Truck Series team, going away after the season. To me, I guess I felt like this was coming for a while, just after the whole legacy switch. Once Jimmy Johnson joined and it became more of like a cup focused team and like it's all about legacy, that was going to leave GMS, the Truck Series team, on its own. And I mean, I don't know what your interpretation is, but it felt to me like, well, why would they keep going with this like sort of standalone truck team when they have a cup team separately? Because Jimmy wasn't going to be like, yeah, let's do trucks too.
Well,
right?
It's a manufacturer thing. It comes down to, which is the big part of it. I mean, they're switching to Toyota. Well, Toyota's got a flagship Truck Series team. I mean, there's only so much you can commit to that series, and they've already committed to that. Yeah. And then, and
they were going to have to do it so much on their own at so much cost. And it's not a winning business model.
It's unfortunate. And it's a great, and they've built a very dominant organization. They've won 2 championships there, and they've given a lot of drivers opportunities to kind of get their foot in the door. And it's really unfortunate because you're losing 3 full-time trucks. But like you said, the writing was pretty much on the wall when this move was announced months ago. Yeah, it just didn't seem sustainable. No. There wasn't going to be a pathway, I guess. Unfortunately, it's going to be interesting to see what that means, and maybe someone else steps in. They're going to have equipment to sell, and who knows. But it's a good series. I mean, it's very competitive for sure. Some of the best racing you'll see. Yeah. All right. Well, Jordan's got to do some work. I don't do work this late at night, writing wise, because it's not good work. My brain, I don't write good anyway. So my brain is too tired, so I need to go to sleep, then wake up and start my writing. So
thanks for those of you who did join us on the YouTube live chat. For those of you listening to the podcast version, when we're at races together, we'll try to do more of these. I think we'll be at we'll be at Bristol, Martinsville, Phoenix, right? What are you laughing at?
There's just there's a few comments.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anyway, thanks everybody for listening or watching, however you consume this. And we will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody. Have a good one.